Welcome to the online experience.
What is going on, guys? Peace, love, and light. It is your boy, Joshua October.
And I'm Jimmy Levar, and this is the online experience.
Hi, my name is MIETTE Hope, and I'm a Brooklyn-based singer-songwriter. Really happy to be here with you guys today.
Whatever it is, I keep on wondering, would it ever be enough to bind me, bind me? Will it ever be enough to feed my appetite? 'Cause I'm never satisfied with what I've got. Will it ever be enough to bind me, bind me? I'm alone. I will always be on my own. I'm alone. I will always be on my own. I'm alone. I'm alone. I will always be on my own. Is this what happy people do? Is this what happy people
Awesome.
For joining us this lovely morning. How is everything going?
Everything's great. I'm kind of in a place right now where I'm recovering. I just got off of a month-long tour, so I'm just kind of like reminding myself that it's okay to rest sometimes and, still, making music. And yeah, I'm just excited for the next chapter and also just allowing myself to kind of, bask in the glory of having just accomplished something big,
Yeah, no, that's so sick. I mean, coming off tour, because I know that was something that you always sing for yourself, at some point, And it's interesting because when I hear your music, if I'm being honest, I don't really hear a genre. I hear more of an emotion.
I love
So that kind of goes into my where does that come from? Where does that sense of self come from?
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that because I was just talking with a friend yesterday that I might make some music with, and he was like, "Oh yeah, listen to your catalog. I didn't really sense a lot of consistency." And at first I was like offended by that, and then I was like, "Wait a second, that's actually been my goal." Is like, I grew up in the mountains and was around a lot of like folk and bluegrass music early on, and then I went to jazz school and learned a lot about R&B and neo soul. Got super into that, and then started working with a couple electronic producers and got into electronic music, and and I love indie, and I think it's just because I have so many influences, and it seems like now more than ever people are more open to whatever genre. I think back in the day, at least what I heard from like my parents and stuff is that if you identify as like say a punk or something, you can't listen to metal even, because then you're not going to be associated with whatever you think your identity is if you identify with a group. And I think I'm really lucky to be living in a time where that's really not so much the case. I think there are people who love My Chemical Romance, but they also love Taylor Swift, and they're not ashamed about it. You know what I mean? So for me, like I love what you said about like no genre, just feeling. Even with the EP that I put out in 2019, Pendulum, that EP, each different song does have kind of like a different genre feeling to it. And for me, it really is about the feeling, because that EP explores the grief process. And so, the first song's really heavy electronic. It's kind of that like shock when that loss hits you. And then the second one has more of like an indie feeling, and that's kind of like the search to, come to acceptance. And then the last one is very like feel good R&B, which is that like feeling of acceptance and like coming to a place of wholeness after a loss. And that journey, if I had stuck to a certain genre with that project, I don't think it would feel the same way, And I feel that way about about all my music. And at times, you know, I feel like the industry doesn't know what to do with me. I've been in a lot of meetings with, you know, people on the industry side, and they're like, so what are you going for? And yeah, I don't really want to say a certain thing that I'm going for, because I'm really just trying to express feelings through music. And I think having a world of different genres at my fingertips is really what makes that possible.
Nice.
Got you. No, I respect that. I respect that.
Yeah, and you know, I want to take it back. You know, I want to take it back. Growing in a small town, you know, in the mountains, you know, being influenced at a young age. I mean, your mom was a musician, right? You know, she played the guitar and she was a singer. You know, can you tell me a little bit about that and how that influenced you in becoming, you know, who the artist you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I see you did your research. Thank you. Yeah, so I feel really lucky to have grown up in a musical household. My mom was even playing in bands when she was pregnant with me. So I like to think that it was kind of, you know, the rhythm from the guitar was getting put into me in the womb. So yeah, I mean, I guess I just feel lucky because I think a lot of musicians sometimes come from a household where their parents like discourage that pursuit, because it's really hard and it's hard to make money and it's not stable. And I think really if you're going to do it, you have to really want it, you know? But I think, yeah, for me, it was just kind of like second nature. And I would go to like a friend's house and be like, oh, where's the piano? Because I just thought that everybody, you know, had access to music in their household at first when I was really small. So yeah, I mean, my first few shows were like playing clarinet in my mom's band. Clarinet was like one of my first instruments. And then I shortly thereafter dropped clarinet because I realized I couldn't sing or accompany myself playing clarinet. And then I picked up the guitar and the ukulele. But yeah, like my first like show experiences were like actually, you know, getting up there and playing a couple songs with my mom's band. And then I ended up becoming like a permanent member and touring with them when I was still living in my hometown. And I think that really gave me a lot of kind of industry experience, even if it was on a smaller level, and kind of a leg up. And I think that's part of what allowed me to get my scholarship to Berkeley, was just having that experience and having that resume and those recommendations from the band members.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's sick. And it's so interesting because you know, you see all that, you see all of like the sides of like how your mother like inspired you. And I know also in Pendulum, the project you just talked about, there was like a clip of you and your dad. And I know your dad also has a huge influence on why you do music. Are you able to share with us a little bit about the relationship you have with your dad, and are you still healing?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned about Pendulum, that project is about grief and my experience with grief, because I lost my father when I was 16. And he struggled with drug addiction for most of my life. And so I kind of feel like I had to grow up at a young age, because I had to come to terms with some really like heavy content, and also just kind of like process what was going on with him without even really being able to understand it. And so he was also a musician, and I have some old CDs of the band that he was in before he met my mom. But, you know, I think he really could have had he had so much potential, you know, and he was creative and funny, and he was an amazing person, but he was just sick, you know. And I think watching his journey and seeing the way that, you know, he lost his life really put a fire under me to kind of tell a different story, live a different story, and, you know, become successful and let my music carry me forward no matter how hard it was, and not succumb to, you know, life kind of bringing me down and holding me back no matter like how hard it is. Because I know part of the reason that he used drugs was because, you know, he struggled with anxiety and depression and things like that, which are also things that I struggle with, and many of my listeners struggle with. And that's kind of why I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the hard things, because I think people who don't have access to the arts may not have an outlet to express those hard emotions and feeling. And I think with the gift that I've been given of a voice and of a musical talent, I think that comes with the responsibility, you know, to express and to share.
Yeah. And I hope you know that what you're doing it's full of courage, and it, you know, and it's very inspiring to see that, you know, from a place of unsureness and not really knowing like what or why things happen, you know, growing up, or why things presented themselves the way they were, you turned that into like you know, something very powerful. That's great. Round of applause for you. Can we give her a round of applause?
Round of applause for that, because, I completely understand, and I could relate on so many levels as well as losing my father. One of the reasons why my company is up and running today, because this was actually something that he wanted to do, but never got the chance to do it while he was here.
Oh, wow.
So I can relate on so many levels too. And I mean, mental health is a big thing, right? I mean, we all struggle and we all go through it, anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADD, ADHD, whatever it is. And, with that, I've kind of learned along my way in my journey to be able to heal and find balance and try and actually better understand why these things happen. Because whether we believe it or not, everything happens for a reason. Whether we see it or not, our spirit angels, our ancestors, they're guiding us, and they're here throughout our journey as well. So I want to, give you, props as well, because it's not easy, especially losing a parent. I mean, nobody's ready to lose a parent. So you're still, persevering and you're still doing your music. So, congrats on that. And I want to talk a little bit about your music, not even genres, but, you mix it up. You got the jazz, you got R&B, a little bit of the neo soul, with those sounds, where does that influence come from when you want to mix it up a bit and be different, or have the instrumental, kind of throw somebody off like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Where do you get that?
Well, I think a big part of like the unexpected, I guess, or like throwing in something interesting really came from like going to music school. And that's not the most interesting, perspective to have as an artist. Like the first manager that I had was like, oh, you should take Berkeley out of your bio. And it's not the first thing that I mention when I talk to people, because it's not an interesting story. It's like, oh, cool, she went to music school, like great, she makes good music, whatever it is.
Right.
But I feel really grateful for that opportunity. And also, like, I came from a lower middle class family. Like, they couldn't afford to send me to college. Like, I worked my butt off to get there and to, scholarship that I got. And I feel really, really grateful for that opportunity. And music school is like a really interesting environment. Like, it's very competitive. And in its own way, it's kind of like a bubble of like a mini bubble of like what the industry actually is. Because it's political, it's competitive, it's, just this kind of like everyone is trying to like climb up.
Right. It's like a competition almost, in a sense. Yeah.
So that was hard for me about it. But what I will say is that having that musical knowledge and that background, it has allowed me to, go a little bit further with it, instead of like, oh, these chords sound great, this song is what this song is going to be. Like, I have these 4 chords, I'm going to play them the whole time, and then I'm going to write a song with it. Having that knowledge, like, oh, I just learned what a major 7/9 chord is. Like, let me see what that sounds like in the bridge of this song, and using tools like that definitely kind of allowed me to make things a little more interesting and exciting in the composition of the music. But I also think, for most of my releases and throughout my career, I've worked with one producer. His name's Ariza, and we have a side project together called The Natural Synthetic, which you can find all that music listed on my page as well, because I'm listed as an artist as well. But I've been just working with him kind of since the beginning, and he's one of the most talented producers I've ever met. And he really he can do any genre. And sometimes we'll just sit down and be like, what do we want to make today? Or like, oh, I just heard this song. Let's see if we can do something kind of like this, or let's do, we don't ever like recreate anything that we've heard, but it's like, okay, this drum groove is really cool. Let's take some inspiration from this specific section of this song. Like one day we were like talking about Fleetwood Mac. So we made like a Fleetwood Mac vibe song. Like one day we were talking about Aretha Franklin, or some newer stuff like Fred Again, or Rufus Du Sol. Like, they're completely different spectrums, but they have influenced both of us in so many ways. And I think the cool thing with Juan and I, and Juan is Ariza is his artist name, is just that we both have broad taste, and both are just excited and inspired by all different kinds of music. So with our project, The Natural Synthetic, we never held ourselves to any type of like bounds or like I don't know, just like sonic personality. It was more just like, if we're putting our heads together, it'll feel consistent, because both of our musical brains like doing that. So he's always like really inspired me and taught me so much. And then when the pandemic hit, and everything kind of went away, I'm not the kind of person who can sit still. I was freaking out and I was like, what am I going to do? And then I realized I had Ableton on my computer. I had taken one Ableton class for songwriters in school. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to make some beats. And I went and like listened to a lot of my favorite stuff and even tried to like, not something that I would ever use, but just to learn, like just reference it and actually try to like recreate it and be like, oh, how did they do that synth? Let me like figure this out. Like, how did they do those drums? And that, because I had so much time, I was able to just really mess around without being like, oh, I need to release a song. So like, I have to have this ready. And like, you know, it was more just an exploration for me. And then I just started to really fall in love with it. And so I think my sound is kind of developing in a direction that is more true to me than it ever has been, purely because I'm just doing it by myself. But I will say that, you know, Juan has taught me so much about production, just being in the room with him and being in the room with other producers. And as I started producing and sessions started happening again, like I would be in the room with producers because I also write for other artists. So even though I've only had one producer on my stuff, mainly because I'm super picky, I've written a bunch of songs with other producers and written for other artists and worked with a lot of different people. So I've always been able to just kind of gather knowledge and inspiration from those producers and just looking up to them and being like, oh, what are you doing there? How did you create that? And just kind of treating life as school, you know? I do think I've learned a lot more just in real life experiences, real experiences in the studio or on stage or on the road that I could have never, ever gotten from a traditional education. And I think it's so possible for any musician or artist to grow and have success without that traditional like music school background, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's dope that you know, you took like producing your own music and like finding your own way of, you know, how you want to sound. And you know, and that reminds me of like some people that you are inspired by, like Jimmy Stack, James Blake. Are there any current people today that, you know, that inspire you a little bit?
Well, those names are definitely up there for me. Like Jimmy is, I would love to, you know, collaborate with him one day. I love the way he treats like production and just like his sonic taste is like so wonderful to me. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Fred again earlier. I just think the way he does his process is like so incredible. He just released like a Tiny Desk where he was like basically playing all the instruments live, even though he's like making electronic music, which is just so cool to me. And he also kind of has this ethos where he like can create a beat anywhere. Like he'll be on a park bench, you know, creating a beat with his like wired headphones. Like it's crazy. You can do anything anywhere. And like I've taken inspo from that ethos by like on my last two singles, the vocals, even though like I have this mic here, I recorded them on my iPhone. I recorded like the iPhone vocals because I was just, you know, creating the beat and getting ideas and being lazy, quite honestly, and being like, here's the idea. I don't want to set up my mic, and then putting it in the beat and then being like, oh, wait, this is the actual like feeling when I wrote it and I will never be able to recreate that. So I'm just going to keep it, you know? And I think with processing and stuff, there's like so much you can do with like shitty audio. And the iPhone actually isn't even shitty. It has like it's basically pre-compressing the audio, and we're so used to listening to any audio that's processed through iPhone. So it's kind of like familiar to the average listener. But I think I got a little sidetracked. I was talking about artists I'm inspired by. Let's see. Blonde Shell is this really dope indie artist on the docket right now that is really just kind of like exploding, and she's just been kind of growing this past year, and her sound is really cool. It has this like kind of classic feeling, but I got to see her live last time she was in New York and also at South by in Austin, and yeah, she's just up there in like a ratty t-shirt and like hair everywhere. Like it's not about like being this icon, it's about being a real person, and just that like she's just expressing herself, and it's really cool to see. So she's really awesome. Caroline Polachek is one of my favorite artists right now too. I think she just has this really interesting like left of center pop sound. it's almost kind of like theatrical in a way, which is cool. And then one of my friends, Dora Jar, has had so much cool success this year and last year. And she went on tour with Billie Eilish, which is so exciting for her. And her sound is really awesome too. It's kind of like an art, it's been called art pop, but I also think it is genre defying in its own way. And it has this kind of, what is the word? It's kind of ethereal, I guess, and fun and explorative. And it's cool because the way she is as a person is she's very much just unabashedly herself. And every time I spend time with her, it makes me want to be myself. And I think that's probably how her listeners feel. Like it really translates through her music. So yeah, those are some people right now that I'm inspired by.
Okay. All right. And, where do you go, with all that you got going on? And, I mean, being on the road, being on tour, things can get very hectic, very overwhelming. And, where do you go to find your peace? Where do you go to recharge and essentially get that balance? Where do you go, and what do you do essentially to find that peace and balance within yourself?
I love that question. Well, because I grew up around with a lot of direct access to nature, I think I definitely always find my peace in nature. And it's funny to be saying that as someone who's choosing to live in New York City, because we don't have that much of it at like natural nature. They're like, here, we made this park for you. Is this okay? Like everything's pretty much man-made, and like there are like trees and whatnot, and you can, take the commuter rail and go upstate or some places over in Jersey. But yeah, I mean, towards the end of the tour, I got to spend a few days in San Francisco and stay with a friend. And we were able to go on a couple amazing hikes, and it just felt so grounding for me. I'm a Virgo, I'm an earth sign. So I think like feeling grounded is like really important to me. And I think the way that I really can get back to that grounding is through like being in nature for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I feel like, most people forget that, I mean, we are connected to nature, as us being human beings. I mean, we're just like, we're also connected to the water, and just like we're connected to the earth. I mean, as being human beings, we are, so powerful with everything that we do with our thoughts. I mean, our thoughts create our reality, and it's very refreshing to definitely hear, artists like yourself where, they go find peace in nature versus a bottle of vodka or Hennessy. You feel me? Right. And it's for sure that, just continue to keep, being your authentic self, like you said, having that balance when you're in those moments where there's some chaos or maybe some negative thoughts, definitely having that time and moment for yourself to take that time, whether it's to take a deep breath and just, release it, let it out, and then go back into what it is that, you were going into. It's very important to do that. It's very important. We don't give ourselves enough time to just breathe, take a moment to just breathe, relax, and then go about it. We just love to just kind of just react, off the emotion or just off the second and how we feel. And, everybody has their own experience with that. But, and that leads me into my next question. Being on the road, I mean, how was it for you? Because, real quick, I want to just take it back. You said this was your first time being on tour as the tour that you was just recently on.
Yeah. So, I mean, different tours that were very like DIY. I think I was always trying to kind of get that experience on the road, and I was in an indie band in college, and we definitely like went out a few different times, but it was always like really gritty and just like playing in a random basement somewhere or a coffee shop, because we didn't actually have, the resources or the following to be playing in like real venues. So I got that experience on the road, but I definitely think like at that time I was just like young and eager, and I was like willing to live like a dirty, gritty lifestyle. And I think now that I'm like in my mid to late 20s, like I've learned so much more about who I am, and I am definitely an introvert. I'm definitely a homebody, which aren't necessarily things that you would think an artist would be. It's just kind of like part of who I am. And I mean, I think the more artists that I actually get to know, like I realize, you know, they put on a face for, you know, the events or the cameras or whatever it is. And then they're like, oh, but I really just love chamomile tea and my cat, you know?
Right.
And like, I guess as I get older, I really do enjoy just like being home and like being in the studio more than anything else, especially like being a producer and like working with other artists. Like that's where I really find my peace and my joy in my work. So that said, touring lifestyle is really hard. And this last tour that I went on was like the first official, like, you know, I'm getting paid a set amount every night. I'm opening for a band and everything. And so that was really, really exciting for me. And even though it's like a situation that can be like a cause for discomfort based on what actually makes me comfortable. It was definitely like cool to kind of push my bounds. And I was on tour with this Irish band called Modern Love. And it was basically like their first time in the US. So it was kind of fun and interesting just being their little like liaison and being like, oh, look at this. Like when we were in Texas, I was like, oh, we got to go to Buc-ee's. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Buc-ee's in Texas, but it's like, it's basically, it's like 7-Eleven on crack, like for truckers. So it's like through Texas, you've got to go to Buc-ee's because they have like actual like branded stuff, like stuff you can only get at Buc-ee's. They have like 25 slushy machines. So it's like when we're in the van all day and we're going to 7-Elevens every single day, I'm like, we got these. But yeah, it was cool just kind of like showing them everything and kind of like seeing America through their eyes because they were so excited by everything. And I was like, oh, that's something that's so normal to me, you know? So that was fun. And they were really sweet. And it was really cool just, you know, playing shows all the time. And it's definitely exhausting. A lot of the time it's like you don't get to where you're staying until like 2 a.m. And then you have like an 8-hour drive the next day and you have to be there for sound check. So you have to wake up at 7 or 8 a.m. So it's like we're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I was trying to also get production work done on my computer while in the van with my computer, and it was dying. And you know, I think what I realized on this tour is like, if you're on the road, you have to just dedicate all of your energy to being on the road and put everything else aside. I mean, I couldn't even really make any like content. Like I was trying my best to stay consistent with TikTok and Instagram. Next time I'm probably just going to like make all my content before I go on the road and then have like a schedule and have it like stacked as I go. Because what I learned really is just that like it's all consuming and it's like a full-time job. Like you're not even sleeping enough, you know, like you're constantly on. And yeah, I mean, I think it's what makes it worth it is getting to, you know, connect with those fans and make new fans. And I think because I started in a DIY type of way and I am like an indie artist and really kind of prioritizing my independence, I'm cutting costs wherever I can. So the merch I was selling are these homemade lighters that I've actually been making for years because I love collaging. So basically I just take a bunch of magazine cuttings and then paste them on the lighters. But because they take me so long to make, I was making new lighters before every show in the car. And just selling out of each batch every night, which was really cool to see the way that people wanted to like support the merch. And, you know, I was playing to audiences who didn't always know who I was, but they, I think, were really like open to me and like became new fans. And I also wasn't sure about that because I know we were talking about like genre, like snobbery, I guess, earlier, you know? But I think people now more than ever, like, even though I'm not really in the same genre space as the band that I was opening up for, like people are really open to me and like, I think became fans, even though it was like their first time hearing about me, which was really just humbling and exciting. Yeah.
So I mean, so with all that, like, is there an end goal with music?
I think I love being an artist. I always want to be an artist. But I think that in some ways, like being in the limelight is scary to me. I like my privacy. Like I would never want to get to a level of fame where I'm like being talked about in tabloids, which isn't even that much of a thing anymore. But like, I don't want people like gossiping about my personal life or even knowing about it. Like, I would love to have a kind of like cult following of people who really get me, who really relate to me. Rather, like, I'm not looking for like a viral moment, you know.
Gotcha.
I'm not looking for instant fame. I'm looking for a really organic build with my fans, and having people that are actually gonna stick around with me through the changes. Yeah. And so I think along with my artistry, I want hit records as a producer, honestly. I want, if I have songs on the radio, I want to have made that beat, you know, and I think that'll elevate my artistry as well, you know, like having that industry credit, having that relationship with those big artists, knowing, you know, they're like, oh yeah, she produced this dope track, and like, have you heard her solo music? You know, like that's kind of the goal for me, is to really like grow as a producer and be making those really kind of like down the middle pop tracks, obviously with my flair on it. But for me as an artist, I don't think I'll ever want to be like a radio pop artist. Like, I don't think I'll ever graduate that side. I think some people have that journey where they start indie and left of center, and then they kind of go to the middle. For me, I think I'll always be making kind of more interesting and experimental music that I'm releasing under my name. And then I'll be making the money music to, you know, sell to artists, and also working on music for film and TV, because that will help me to stay independent. And I think the biggest thing about the industry that I've learned from, because I was a music business major in school too, and I learned a lot about the industry, and then just from being in it, I think the biggest thing I've learned is like, labels are really great if you need funding, and if you know, don't know like what you want to do and how you want to do it, because they can help you do that. And I think for me, like, I would definitely sign a label deal if it made sense in the right moment. And I was at a point where I was really trusted by the label. But for me, like, I want to run my own business. I want to hire my own people and be making money that I'm filtering back in, you know, and that's what I could really do through making music for film and TV, because that's like where all of the money really is in the music industry. So yeah, I think my goal really is to like kind of have a model like the way Chance the Rapper built up his career like early on, is like, you know, prioritizing independence, keeping all of his rights, and building out his team, and being like, okay, this is my marketing person, you know, this is my socials person, this is my ad spend person, and actually trusting each of those people alongside his manager, and hiring those people with the money that they're bringing in from the music, you know what I mean? And not signing it away and being like, okay, well, the label is making all the money off of me, but they gave me this, you know, large sum of money up front. So yeah, I think goal would be really just to run my own business, stay independent, and continue to both like produce records and do my artistry.
Love that. Let's just clap it up, give a round of applause for that, because that answer is beautiful, powerful, and it's true on so many levels, right? I mean, business-wise, businesswoman, entrepreneur, you know, it's like on so many levels. It's, you know, when you're in full control of your business, your company, and you know who is going to be involved in it, what energy is going to be around me, you know, it's very major, and it's a thing in the industry they don't really hear, you know, they kind of just go along with it. But you know, moving very strategic and smart on the people you want to bring into your circle, your tribe, you know, your business, you know, these are things very essential that it takes a little bit of time to do, you know, and build and establish these types of relationships with these people. So that's a powerful thing, you know. And as we get ready to wrap it up, you know, I just got a couple more questions, and you know, I wanted to ask you, you know, how do you find the right people to be around you within the industry that you're in? You know, it's so difficult because, like you said, you know, some people, you know, they have a mask they love to put on, you know, whether it's in front of the cameras or in front of the fans or in front of certain people, and they're just not being their true authentic self. You know, how do you find people that are around you and that are working with you and that are building with you essentially? You know, how are you able to figure out, you know, who's genuine and who's around for the right reasons and who aren't?
I love that question, because that's definitely something I think about all the time. And honestly, what I realized is the people that are on my team right now are people that I had a friendship with for years before I started working with them. And obviously that takes a lot of time, and, you know, I should probably figure out another way, but that's just kind of how has happened naturally, you know, like
Right.
my mixer, like he was one of my first friends in New York, and, you know, I was working with Ariza, and Ariza had his mixer that we were using for everything. Right. So I didn't even think to hire him. I was just like, oh, like, you're awesome. We're friends. We're, you know, chilling. We're in the same circle or whatever. And then when I started, you know, self-producing, and I was like, oh, I need a mixer, he was obviously the first person that came to mind. But, you know, I trust him as a friend. And, you know, I think we formed our relationship based on just enjoying each other's company. And it wasn't even like a question of, should I hire you? Because it was literally just like, I trust you. I love you. I want to bring you on for this, you know?
Okay.
And my A&R at my distribution company right now, her and I have been super close, and she was an A&R at Majors for a while, and now she works at like an indie distro. And you know, we had always kind of wanted to work together, and we did a couple different things. Like I recorded some covers for the catalog that she represented at the publishing company she worked at and stuff, but she worked at the majors, and I've always been clear about the fact that I don't want to sign a major deal. And, you know, but I just really trust her, and I think she's, you know, really good at what she does. And so I would always send her my demos and just be like, what do you think of this? You know, and I don't really send my demos around. So, you know, she knows my music so well, and knows me as a person so well. And so then when she started working at this company, and I was like, hey, I'm getting ready to, you know, release my next project. Can you introduce me to some different indie distributors? And she's like, well, actually, I just started working at this distributor, and I would love to like pitch you to my boss. And it ended up just working out so well. But she's one of my best friends in the world, you know? So I think really for me, like a really solid business relationship starts with friendship, for sure.
Love that. Love that. Powerful.
That's really
Yes.
great.
Yes.
That's awesome. And so before I ask one of my last questions, I first want to say that I would love to see a collaboration with you and Lana Del Rey. I think that would be a sick collaboration. I'm just going to throw that into the ether.
I love that. She's awesome.
Yeah. One of the things I want to ask you is that, you know, on this podcast show, at the end of the show, we've always asked every guest that comes on this question, and it's and it can mean so many different things depending on, you know, what you believe in. But what does spirituality mean to you?
Well, let's see. So I was raised in a really spiritually open way. You know, it was like if I wanted to go to church, my mom would bring me to church. And I think I heard about my friends going to church, and I was like, what is this? Can we go? So she like brought me to church as a kid. And I would say I don't necessarily identify with the like traditional structure of like the one God and the, you know, hell and heaven thing. And I also would say, like, I haven't read the Bible all the way through, so I couldn't even really say whether I identify with it or not, because I don't know enough about it. But I was raised in a very like just spiritually open way. And I think, at least for me, my spirituality is like a trusting in the universe, and just that, you know, everything will work out the way it's meant to. And what you said earlier about like everything happening for a reason, I super, you know, identify with that theory and that concept. And I think, yeah, really just having a trust and knowing that there is some kind of higher power that, you know, is with us and is guiding us. I think that definitely resonates with me. And, you know, my mom is definitely kind of more, she's pretty much a hippie, and she identifies more in the like Buddhist and like pagan space. So she kind of combined some different theories with her belief system. And she used to just take us out into nature, you know, and that's kind of a big pagan tradition. Like usually on Sundays, we would go on a hike and go and meditate in nature and connect. And to me, like the most real form of like a higher power is like Mother Earth, you know, and she's holding us and she's supporting us, and we have to treat her, you know, the way that we'd want to be treated. So yeah, I guess I'm still learning, you know, I'm still exploring. And I think the most wise thing is knowing that you don't know. Nobody knows really what's out there, what happens when we die, or but it's like whatever you connect with and whatever makes you feel safe and kind of like guides you forward is what you should be gravitating towards. And I think that's different for everybody.
Yeah, and I love how you compared it to Mother Earth, like like holding you. And I was actually interested, like was there a moment after your dad's passing where you had to also hold her?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing after I lost my dad that I did is my stepmom gave my sister and I both some of his ashes. And I moved to Boston when I went to school and brought the ashes with me. And on one of the anniversaries of his passing, I went to the ocean and spread some of his ashes in the ocean there. And to me, that just feels like now he's just in the ocean, like, and he's spread everywhere in the ocean. And so whenever I go to the ocean now, I just sense him and feel him with me. And I guess I got to do it on the West Coast too if I move to the West Coast, but I love the East Coast. So even now, like being in New York and going to the ocean, I can still like feel him there with me.
Wow. That is, just, just an honest response to this interview. And just how powerful it was on so many levels. I could relate to, having dad's ashes and throwing it in the ocean as well. And, you're absolutely right. We are on this earth that it's a living earth, and scientists even, they wanted to entertain this, so they sunk a shaft in Greenland and throughout months they pulled up all this data and information, and basically what it told them that this earth is a living being, it's alive, and she hurts just as well as we hurt, right? And it's great to hear other like-minded individuals, other creatives as well, and always remember this, and to the viewers and the listeners as well, is that energy never dies, it just gets transferred, and to the ones that we lose throughout this journey in this world, they actually are never gone. We just can't see them any longer, but they're always still here. And that is all the time that we have now. This is your boy Joshua October.
I'm Jimmy Levar, and this is The Online Experience.
And thank you for having me. My name is MIETTE Hope, and so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. Love.